Hello, wrestling fans. This is Sal Rough Cuts LaSardo reporting in from Claremont, Florida with this edition of Rough Cuts. These are my opinions only. They have nothing to do with OneWrestling.com, built after the WWE. Throughout the course of wrestling history, there have been many promotions. Back in the day when I grew up in the 70s, you had what they call our territories. And from there, some territories expanded and tried to grow. Others went down quickly. But wrestling was based on territories and being able to cater to an audience in that specific area. The WWE, WWF became the mainstream model per se, along with then the NWA, WCW as well. But let's not forget other promotions that came along. The AWA was under the Vernon Gregania family. WCCW, which was by Fritz Von Erich, the Von Erich family, down in Dallas, where they held their big events in the Sportatorium, and in Irving, Texas. Memphis Wrestling, which was Jerry Lawler's stomping ground. You had Calgary Stampede, you had Smoky Mountain Wrestling. The list goes on and on and on. Today, we have AEW, NXT, which is another brand of the WWE, but still another entity, even though it's under the McMahon umbrella. Impact, which was TNA. And then we have a whole slew of indie scenes as well. Ring of Honor, New Japan. The list goes on and on. Every once in a while, every once in a great while, a promotion will come along and will be breathtaking, defining, innovative, fan-oriented, extreme, exciting, leaving you speechless, giving you the moment that I can't wait to see what's going to happen next time. One of a kind, creative to a point where every week it was something new and different. Pushing the envelope. Yes, all of these adjectives describe this edition of Rough Cuts, a legendary promotion simply known as ECW. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling, will be this edition of Rough Cuts, and hope you all enjoy it. For those of you that don't really know the backstory about ECW, it was initially under the umbrella of the NWA, known as Eastern Championship Wrestling, under Todd Gordon and Paul Heyman for the first couple of years. The inaugural champion was Jimmy Superfly Snuka, and they had Don Morocco, Tito Santana. Shane Douglas held the title before he crowned it or christened it the Extreme Championship, and that became its own entity. But early on, they were a new promotion, bringing in veteran guys from the WWE, WWF, and getting things going. But when you got a mind like Paul Heyman, a true mastermind like Paul Heyman, you know things aren't just going to stay the same. He went into this with a vision, and he had his own ideas. He had a vision for this promotion, and he had to get it going to where he wanted to. And what you do is you mold it. That's what you do. You mold it to get it to where it needs to go. And 3 years later, when Shane Douglas re-won the title back, he dropped it, which was under the NWA umbrella, dropped it and said, it's no longer the NWA, I'm the franchise, and this is now going to be Extreme Championship Wrestling. Rather, Eastern Championship Wrestling became Extreme Championship Wrestling. And from 1995, from 2001, give or take, this was a promotion that brought out a lot of firsts. First of all, there were basically no rules. I mean, every match ended in pinfall or submission. There were no countouts or disqualifications. They used weapons galore. Kendo sticks, chairs. All right. I remember Axel Rotten and Balls Mahoney taped their fists and they stuck them in glue. And then in a jar of glass, and they did their thing. There were barbed wire matches. Not to say that they were the first to do it, because the NWA, Dusty and Tully had their barbed wire, but these were more extreme barbed wires. They wrestled in the crowds. They went into the crowd and fought, and the fans actually would give the weapons to the wrestlers, which was basically what Paul Heyman's vision was, to cater to the wrestling fan. That's what Paul Heyman was doing with ECW, was to cater to the wrestling fan. It wasn't something you can take to a 10 or a 12-year-old to. I think we all could agree on that. It's just not something you can take a child, because of the extreme nature of what they were doing. But these men and women went out there and performed some of the most extreme stunts on a nightly basis that maybe you hardly ever saw, and if you saw it maybe on a one match off on a pay-per-view, but you really wouldn't see it all the way through. They were also the first to bring intergender wrestling mainstream, and that happened between Bill Alfonso and Beulah McGillicuddy, who, known as real life, was Trisha Hayes, who was married to Tommy Dreamer. Bill Alfonso dropped about 10 gallons of blood in that, literally. He lost more blood in that match than in any match in the entire history of ECW, and ECW had some bloody matches. But they were the first to truly bring intergender wrestling to the forefront, to the mainstream. It happened, but you didn't know about it. So women became more involved in this promotion. And it started with the queen herself, the queen of extreme, Francine. Francine Fournier, queen of extreme. She was the innovator herself for the female group. And she went out there and did all these things that Paul asked her to do. She was a heel for the most part. She managed Tommy Dreamer. She mentioned many times that probably wasn't the best fit, wasn't the highlight of her career. Nothing at Tommy in front of the camera. The chemistry wasn't there. She managed Shane Douglas, pardon me. Shane Douglas, the franchise, for quite some time, until Shane had left. Shane had left for greener pastures because Shane had a wife and children at home, and he had to do what he had to do for a business decision. She hooked up with Justin Credible and Lance Storm, and they had their click. And she found success there. She was the ECW original. She had offers to leave, and she stayed put. Paul Heyman gave her a raise, and whatever it was, may not have been much, she stayed. And what I'm trying to tell you is that Francine wasn't original. She was the true queen original. She took those bumps. She went out on the mic and did her thing. She had cat fights with Beulah. She wasn't afraid to mix it up with the guys. She did everything and anything that you could ask for from a promoter that would want his performers to do. She was an original. She was loyal to Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman gave her the canvas to do these things, and she went out and did them. Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, Rob Van Dam, Bill Alfonso, Mikey Whipwreck, the Sandman, all were ECW originals, just to name a few. You also had guys like Lance Storm who came in, Jerry Lynn who came in, the terrible one himself, from the Devil Cross Ranch in Amarillo, Texas. Terry Funk was a major part of the organization in extreme matches. Also, Mick Foley was a major part of it. You had a mix of veterans, known household names, and you had guys that you never really heard of before. Rhino, I never heard of Rhino until Rhino came in. You had a good, solid mix of workers that went out there and performed in front of a small arena. Now, the ECW arena in the Hammerstein Ballroom maybe held 2,500, 3,000 people or so. And yet, every time that these performers went in front of the crowd, it felt like they were wrestling in front of 30,000 or more. That's the feeling I had gotten. That the crowd was so into it. It didn't matter who was a face or a heel. It really didn't matter. If they liked what they saw, they chanted ECW, ECW. They let you know about it. If they didn't like what we were doing that night, they would let you know for that match. They had the best angles in pro wrestling. They truly did have the best angles in pro wrestling at that time. Some of it could be questionable, but Francine Fournier confirmed it. I'm going to get to an excerpt that I have here from Francine that I had the chance to talk to Francine. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But yeah, she literally confirmed it, that ECW had the best angles. People wanted to work for Paul Heyman. Why? Because Paul Heyman gave you freedom as far as your character and be able to go out there and entertain the audience. Paul Heyman wanted to create a promotion that was about you, the fans, and go out there and give you what you wanted for the money that you paid for, whether you were watching at home or you were in the arena itself. Yes, it wasn't going to be 100,000 people, but that's not what it was. It was about trying to make money. That was the whole point of any promotion, is you're not trying to compete with the big dogs, you're trying to make money and trying to put on a product that fans would want to tune in. And I believe Paul Heyman was successful in that regards, that he was doing everything possible for it. I had a chance to talk to Francine, and as you were aware, that they had a contract with TNN. And ECW, according to her, in no way when this whole thing with TNN was ending had run its course, she had said. Every performer was still under contract, was giving it 100% every single night. Fans were coming out to see them. They had the best angles, as I reiterated, and they really don't know what happened, because whatever happened with TNN, the entire roster never had closure, and I totally agree with it. They never had closure. She also said she don't know what would have happened if they invested in a station that cared. It could have been a different story if they found the right station. The fact was that TNN, which was back in the national network, didn't care about ECW. They were already invested into WWE, and they wanted, the network, after the year was up and the WWE was in. TNN did not care about ECW, plain and simple. They did not give the care behind the scenes with Paul Heyman, what Paul Heyman was trying to do. They aired at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and Paul Heyman had to try to market his promotion and try to sell pay-per-views in the middle of the night. It was very difficult to do. And remember, this is Paul Heyman's and Todd Gordon's baby. So it was very difficult. And you could understand that feeling of what was going on. In 2005, she was a part of One Night Stand, and then a year later, Vince brought back ECW, and that was, according to her, known as the fake ECW, she liked to call it. The 2005 numbers for One Night Stand were absolutely incredible, and then it dwindled off the last 2 years. In 2006, she said, failed miserably. I thought 2006 wasn't entirely that bad. I don't think it was as bad as she said it was, but again, she would know better. I mean, she was, wasn't have to be a part of it, but she would know better than anybody. But I think from watching, I don't think it was that bad. The whole thing with Rob Van Dam and John Cena, I thought was a pretty good build and everything, but it did have more of a WWE feel as opposed to an ECW, and I think that's where she said it failed miserably. And also the buy rate was down quite a bit. She mentioned after the 2005 that it was nothing from the 2006 and 2007, it was nothing like the original. It basically turned off fans from watching. The numbers did show. It did show when Vince had it on the separate network, I believe it was Sci-Fi, and the 2 One Night Stands. It just, yeah, I mean, it started to fail miserably, and I don't blame it. It was a fake ECW. And the original fans, they hated it because it was under the Vince McMahon umbrella. It was really no longer Paul Heyman's baby, even though Paul Heyman had say, but he just didn't have to say the way he would want to have it said. So it was basically disaster from the beginning, according to her, but it gave people an opportunity to work, and that's always a good thing, and I agree. Paul Heyman did what he needed to do to get his people to work, and that's something we cannot seem to forget. But it should have never been called ECW, and I agree with it because it was nothing like that at all. Understandably with that is that from 95 to around 2001 or so, Barely Legal was their last true pay-per-view, and the climax was with Jerry Lynn and Rob Van Dam, and it was nothing. If anything, if you can get a chance to go on the WWE Network or look for it online, For nostalgic purposes, it was great, but it wasn't. You could see the falling off. The wheels were falling off on it, and obviously you understand where that direction was going. But understandably, that this was a promotion that was very creative and very innovative. We got the Dudley Boys. Devon and Bubba Ray are WWE Hall of Famers. Raven was an established wrestler long before he came into ECW. You had a solid mix. Paul Heyman sensed talent a mile away and did everything he could, I believe, to bring that talent to the forefront. And imagine if they would have gotten a better deal from TNN. And if TNN would have truly invested in ECW the way they did in WWE, I agree with Francine. There's no way ECW run its course. They would have had several years. Remember, they were still very young yet. Francine was still in the prime of her career, as a lot of the performers were. And that there's no way that this promotion should have basically just fell apart the way it did. And the blame can't be on Paul Heyman or the performers. It can't be, or Todd Gordon. The network and to try to establish a network itself, or a station, or an element, a genre that would be able to say, hey, give us a chance, this is what we can do. When you're broadcasting at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, it's hard to make a buck. There was little to no advertising off of TNN for ECW. TNN was totally committed to WWE, and Francine made it crystal clear when I spoke to her. What do we take from ECW as far as where its place in history? As I said, I use so many adjectives. It truly has an incredible place in history. Francine, what could you say about her? The things that she did was one of a kind. What Beulah did was one of a kind. These women and men did things on a nightly basis that basically beat their bodies up. And they're still feeling it today. And yet, all they wanted to do was entertain a wrestling fan. It wasn't about money. Of course, money is everything. You want to make money. And some of these guys, men and women, have families to support. Yes, they needed to work. But it was more about money. They wanted to work for Paul. Paul believed in his performers. It was a brotherhood, a sisterhood of performers that went out there and heard the cheers and jeers of the crowd. And as small as it was, it felt like you were wrestling in front of 30, 40, 50,000 people on a nightly basis. The fans were so into it that it made it as though you couldn't wait to go to work. Francine was not the lady there in ECW. You know, Beulah was a part of it, known as Trisha Hayes, who was married in real life to Tommy Dreamer, who, she's out of it now. She's out of it, Beulah. She's actually written some children's books, and her kids were on Sopranos, going back when the Sopranos were on. Dawn Marie, another vital part of the organization, she became a nurse. She's working the front lines on the COVID pandemic, so good for her. Francine also mentioned she had tremendous high praise for the late Nancy Benoit, so God rest her soul. Yes, that Nancy was Nancy was a very big vital part of the organization from the very beginning until she had left. We cannot forget Sonny was a part of it. Yes, Sonny was there with Chris Candido. Unfortunately, we lost Chris Candido, and that was a very horrible feeling altogether. So yes, we have lost a few wrestlers along the way, and Chris Candido mainly being one of them. Tommy Dreamer was doing his House of Hardcore, and with the pandemic that would not have so long, but Tommy Dreamer was doing the House of Hardcore stuff. So that's something to keep an eye out for when things start subsiding. Joey Styles, the voice of, oh my God, yes, the voice of ECW. I mean, how could you not get excited? Joey Styles, if you're sitting at home, brought you into that match. He was the Vince Scully of wrestling. He was the one-man wrecking crew. It was him. It was purely Joey Styles. And Taz actually came along. We can't forget the human submission suplex machine himself, Taz, in his own right, who's now working in AEW and managing and getting back into things, so good for him. So some of the wrestlers have come back in different promotions and done other things. As you know, Paul Heyman was managing Brock Lesnar, the Advocate, and doing being on-air character. But it started with when they did this as a brotherhood and a sisterhood to come together for you, the fans. And we can never forget that. In my eyes, the most underrated performer in the history of that company is Jerry Lynn. My eyes, it's Jerry Lynn. We could get a debate about it. Jerry Lynn was truly one of the most underrated performers. He is truly a gifted, talented performer to go out there every night and work some of the best matches in the history of ECW. Truly. He could wrestle any style of match that you gave him to do. And I hope that he's inducted into every Wrestling Hall of Fame one day because he truly belongs there. No doubt about it. He just had that it factor, and Paul Heyman saw it, and Paul Heyman let him run with it, and you cannot forget that. Shane Douglas, you had to start someplace. You started with the franchise. Shane Douglas was the longest reigning ECW champion in the history of the promotion, and you needed that. You needed to have that focal point. You needed to have the franchise, the big dog. But you also can't forget the Jerry Lynns, the Mikey Whipwrecks, the Tommy Dreamers. You can't forget these guys, Sabu, Rob Van Dam, the Dudleys, the Pitbulls, Mick Foley, Terry Funk, all these guys. You can't forget Dustin Credible, Raven. They mocked the New World Order from the WCW days with the PWO, the Blue World Order, the Blue Meanie, and Stevie Richards. So if I left anybody out, I apologize, guys. But you had a collection of amazing, talented performers, night in and night out, go out there for you, the fans. And what more could you ask? Will there ever be closure? Probably not, because of the way things unfolded with TNN and the way it went down with One Night Stand. They had tried Tommy Dreamer with the One Night Stand or reuniting thing with Impact. I didn't think it was anything close to duplicating that. It wasn't. But we have a good 6, 7, 8 years to look back on what ECW was, and that was a very creative promotion that had an incredibly gifted, talented, athletic performers that went out there and gave you, the fans, all that you can handle night in and night out. No countouts, no disqualifications, blood, sweat, and tears, and their bodies still ache to today. I also want to wrap up just one final thing about that I asked Francine. She told me, and I quote, "I feel blessed that I was part of ECW. So many workers say that they wish they got to work there. I am lucky I did it. It was something special, and you can't really understand what we all went through together unless you were part of it. I have fond memories, even though I wish my body wasn't so beat up. I'm happy that I can call myself an ECW original. It was the best federation to work for, and I look back on my time fondly." Francine, thank you very much for answering my questions, and thank you for that. So you can hear from Francine, as she said, she does look back on it very fondly. And if I'm a Wrestling Hall of Fame, especially the WWE, the first person I'm going to put in, as far as a lady is concerned, I'm going to put the Queen of Extreme, Francine, because she was truly innovative for the female performers. She set the bar for the female performers, and she belongs in the WWE Hall of Fame and in any Wrestling Hall of Fame because she was the first and one of a kind. Paul Heyman has his staple mark into the WWE Hall of Fame. There's no doubt about it. And also, I feel Shane Douglas needs to go, along with Jerry Lynn and many others. But right off the bat, yes, the Queen herself, Francine Fournier, belongs in every Wrestling Hall of Fame, especially the WWE, because she was the true queen of wrestling and the true queen of extremities. She went out there night in and night out and basically beat her body up for you, the fans. And I have nothing but high praise for each and every single performer. I watch their pay-per-views. I watch their shows. You truly can look back on it very fondly. Maybe not for a 10 or 12-year-old, but from an adult's perspective, 17, 18, 19 years old, you started watching wrestling. You saw something that were very different, very creative, and you saw angles. Maybe they crossed the line a little. I don't think they crossed it entirely. I don't think they meant to do anything entirely. They just wanted to cater to the fans, the wrestling fan. And Paul Heyman, listen, he heard you, and it's just unfortunate that there wasn't the proper closure. I thought One Night Stand was basically some closure, but it wasn't the true closure that the performers deserved. they deserved a lot better, and TNN should have done them a lot better, and they wronged them, and it wasn't fair because they were in their prime, and they had a lot of years left in the tank to give. And it's just too bad that TNN did not take them seriously enough and give them the platform that they needed. Starting earlier, make the notation that, for the viewing audience, and give them the platform and the marketing that was needed to be successful so that these performers could have had jobs for a lot longer than they did. And I understand Paul Heyman's thing with Vince and all, and getting the guys to work and keeping them busy, and I totally respect it. So you can't hold anything against Paul Heyman. I believe he did everything he could do, and according to what I told all of you fans, yes, I believe Paul Heyman did everything he could have done. And it just fell on the networks, and maybe it was just the timing was just not right. But nevertheless, we may not have closure fully, but we will have memories, eternal, lasting memories forever on the WWE Network, Amazon. You can look for the videos online and see and live and relive the history of ECW. Fans that want to keep up with Francine, she's on Twitter at ECW Francine Diva. She also has a website, patreon.com. I want to let that out there because I want to thank her for doing this for me. You could sign up for it. It's at Patreon, patreon.com. You can sign up for, she has different things you can sign up for on a monthly basis. So I encourage you to check it out. I did too. I became a member. It's not expensive at all. And I do want to thank her again, Francine. Thank you, my dear, for answering all the questions for me. She also does cameos on at cameos.com. You can check her out and look her up. Very nominal fee. She can do a baby face, a heel. Check her out on Twitter as well. I also want to thank Chad Flatt as well for helping me out with this as well. Chad Flatt does Heroes and Legends. Chad, thank you very, very much for helping me out, getting me my questions answered. It's greatly appreciated. If you haven't checked out Chad Flatt, Heroes and Legends, please do on Facebook and on Twitter. He lets you know when he has live guests, and you could join on the discussion as well. So with that being said, ECW is gone in the 2020, but it will never, ever be forgotten. It will solely be remembered forever. Paul Heyman will never let us forget it, I assure you of that. And it was his baby, and it will never be forgotten about. We could be able to relive it. And on behalf of Rough Cuts, I thank every single performer that ever participated in every show, in ECW Arena, Hammerstein, every pay-per-view, everyone that was involved in ECW. Thank you very much for the memories, for the sacrifices to your bodies, the time away from your families, but most importantly, to show me as a wrestling fan that there is a thing of loyalty, brotherhood, sisterhood does exist in wrestling, and also to believe in yourself and not to give up, and not ever to give up, and to fight for what you believe in. And most importantly, remember that the wrestling fan paid their money to come out and see you, and you go out there every night and give them 110%, no matter what the circumstances are. And there has never, ever been anything like ECW. Every performer that walked through that curtain they gave you 110%. So for this edition of Rough Cuts, Extreme-wise, or ECW-wise, I thank you. May all your matches be a main event. And until next time, I'm Sal LaSardo reporting in from Claremont, Florida. You have a good night, everybody.